Hello and welcome to another edition of For the Record. I'm Sean Murphy. My guest today is Brian Orenstein. He is CEO of Charter Oak Federal Credit Union. Brian was nice enough recently to come on my radio show, and today he has joined me on my TV show. So welcome. Thanks for being on.
Well, thank you, Sean. Thanks for having me.
Before we get into Charter Oak Federal Credit Union, I think when somebody asks what the difference is between a credit union, or actually when they ask the definition of a credit union, I think what they are asking is what's the definition between a credit union and a more traditional bank. Would you agree?
Yeah, no, I think a lot of times credit unions are misunderstood, and credit unions have certainly changed over the years, so I think that does cause some of the confusion.
So what is a credit union?
A credit union is a financial institution similar to a bank. At Charter Oak, we're what they call a community-based credit union. So our field of membership, which is where we can do business, is New London County and Windham County in the state of Connecticut, while banks can do business anywhere in the United States and, for that matter, in the world. So we have limits from that standpoint. We are not-for-profit. We return all of our profits back to the members through either higher deposit rates or lower loan rates. Our board of directors is a volunteer board of directors. They work very hard and don't get paid, so I'm very thankful to them.
Well, and I think that's a good point. I think people perceive, like the traditional bank as like a big, kind of cold, institution, and the customer is almost like a number. And I think that people look upon a credit union as more local, as more community based, and they get a better feeling about it.
We try to be softer and gentler.
Yeah.
I mean, we certainly have a lot of local community banks that do a good job and act similar to credit unions. Our credit union started in the shipyard down at Electric Boat, $25 a piece for 10 workers at Electric Boat. So those are the grassroots of our credit union, and today we've grown a lot more than that.
Now, credit unions, at least in the past, and maybe even now still, that you needed to have some sort of affiliation, either with work or something like that?
Right, so we started at Electric Boat, so you had to either work at Electric Boat or be a family member of someone who did. And then in the very early 80s, the board of directors at that time decided to go to what they call a community-based credit union, and that's how we have the current charter that we have today. But many credit unions in the state of Connecticut are still tied to an employer, and there are advantages and disadvantages of both.
Right, and you still have all the same, federal protections and things like that.
Yep, we are insured. Our deposits are insured by the NCUA, while a bank would be insured by the FDIC. Same limits, exactly the same.
Are they both the same government type?
They're both government-affiliated agencies, fully backed by the United States government. So there's really no differences as far as insurance is concerned and safety of the money is concerned.
So how was it decided way back when that credit unions in general were needed or were desired as opposed to a typical bank?
Well, that's a great question. Credit unions were founded by the Federal Credit Union Act, and the reason for them was really to give competition to the banks as a grassroots type effort. And basically one of the things we do is we keep the banks in check, because if there were no credit unions, banks could charge whatever they want. So we're just another competitor with a different structure, and banks have some advantages. We have some advantages as far as the corporate structure is concerned. But by having a different structure, because we're not for profit, we can offer, again, higher deposit rates and lower loan rates. So that keeps the banks close to us from a competitive standpoint.
Now, but you say banks would be able to charge whatever they wanted if there were no credit unions, but aren't they still regulated by government guidelines?
Well, from a usury standpoint, they might be, but within a range, they certainly could. And certainly banks would have to compete with other banks.
Right.
But we're just another entity with a different structure that keeps, and we keep each other in check, if you will. So
but you still follow the same federal guidelines as the banks do.
Absolutely, similar regulations and similar compliance, and again, there's little nuances here and there, but for the most part, very similar. My career started in banking. I came to a credit union, and honestly, I didn't know a lot about credit unions at that time.
But you knew about banking. So.
Oh, absolutely. I was in banking for 20 years before I came to the credit union side. And it's an interesting transition. Very similar in some ways, very different in others. Different philosophies. So.
Yeah, but it works. Are credit unions in general, are they growing in popularity?
Well, certainly credit unions have grown recently. Well, they've been growing all along, but if you remember about a year and a half ago, there was something called Bank Transfer Day. It was in November of 2011, I believe. And there was people fed up with the large banks, the Bank of Americas, and again, not the local community banks that we know here down in Connecticut, but the larger banks. And people were concerned about the fees that they were being charged. And so people just got fed up, and it was almost a social media movement, really, that started the whole thing. And
darn that Facebook and Twitter.
Well, for us, it was terrific. I mean,
Thank you, Facebook.
We really have benefited from that media, it was a grassroots effort. It was a woman, I think, out in California who really started the whole thing. And really, it was, it's been a boom for credit unions and for small community banks.
You know what, since I like to bounce around a little bit, and since this popped into my head and you mentioned that, I just want to, Cyprus popped into my head for a second, where people were making runs on the bank, and that happens all over the place, from time to time throughout the course of history. But if you want to comment on that a little bit about.
Well, luckily in the United States, we really don't have that issue. I mean, obviously it's a concern if, when the government was having some trouble a few years ago. But luckily in the United States, we don't have those issues really, and a lot of that's because of the deposit insurance that's in place. That there's no reason to have a run on a bank as long as the government's going to be in place and you're under the federal insured limits. Your money's safe.
But you mentioned a few years ago about the banking situation. Did credit unions feel an effect of the overall cascade of negativity, I guess you could say, by a few bad eggs?
We actually got the positive side.
Is that right, really?
Because, and for the local community banks, unfortunately, they took some of the negative of that, even though they had nothing to do. We keep saying that credit unions had nothing to do with the crisis, from Lehman Brothers and the whole crash and all that type of stuff. We say credit unions didn't have anything to do with it, and we didn't. The small community banks didn't either. It was really the larger players, and still there are lawsuits going around from those larger players today. But the credit unions were seen as, by a lot of the consumer advocates, the Susie Ormans of the world, and that group really supported credit unions. Huffington Post is another one that really brought credit unions into the limelight and said, hey, this is an alternative. If you're fed up with your bank, here are some alternatives, and here are the advantages of that.
For those that may not know, basically the gist of it was just bad loans that just kind of spiraled and dominoed out of control, basically?
It was aggressive lending, packaging of mortgages, of risky type mortgages into securities, and then having those securities resold. Yes, rampantly throughout the banking industry is really.
During that bad time, were credit unions still available for people? Was there still an opportunity for people if, it just happened to be at that time they were ready to maybe, apply for a mortgage or things like that? Was it an okay time for you?
Yes, it definitely was. We never stopped lending. Did we tighten some credit standards? Sure. We had to, because the regulators were, I shouldn't say anything bad about the regulators, but the regulators were tightening standards, some of it a little too late. So we had to address that as well. But really, we never stopped lending. And again, a lot of banks didn't stop lending, but what you hear in the papers is they always talk about the larger banks, and then they generalize across the board. Luckily, credit unions are left out of that generalization many times. So.
But you do have to, when bad things happen, you do have to maybe pause for a second and just kind of maybe look over your own system of the way you do things and just go, okay, we're still doing it the right way, pause for a second.
Absolutely, and it's a good checkup when things like that happen. We certainly went over all of our processes. I mean, honestly, we do it all the time now. You have to be smarter and better than you were last year and the year before. So we definitely go through our processes, trying to improve them from an efficiency standpoint, from a risk standpoint, and from helping the members as well.
So, Charter Oak Federal Credit Union. It is growing all the time. It's humble beginnings. Did it always have the same name, or did it start out with a different name?
We were Electric Boat Community Credit Union, and
right.
had a few different names along the way. We've been Charter Oak for about 30 years now.
Right. And you're only growing. One of the things we talked about on the radio, so we'll talk about here, is merging with Quiet Corner. So let's talk about that a little bit.
Yep. Quiet Corner Community Credit Union is a very small credit union up in Putnam, Connecticut. Which was within our field of membership there in Windham County. That's your classic credit union from
very community,
very small.
Yep.
Started as a very small credit union, people getting together. people depositing money, people borrowing money. I mean, that's really the theory of credit unions.
Almost like the same money in a way. Yeah.
Well, really, that's the theory of credit unions, that it's a joint together of deposits, and then, okay, let's lend out to people who need the money, that type of thing. So a great credit union, just in this world of regulation that we're in, and a lot of the backlash from 2008 and the economic crisis we faced, it is difficult for small institutions. They don't have the exact same regulations as us, because there are some over a certain asset size there's more regulation, but there's a ton of regulations that, when Quiet Corner has one employee, that person is the CEO, they're the teller, they're the janitor, they're the compliance person, they're everything. It's amazing how small credit unions and small banks can do that today.
So two credit unions can merge. Is it a similar situation? Because banks, traditional banks, merge all the time.
Yep.
Is it a similar
Well,
process?
it's a little bit more difficult. In a lot of times the bank situations is a stock purchase. Okay, credit unions don't have stock. We're owned by our depositors and our members, as is Quiet Corner. So we have to. So really, it's a voluntary merger. It would never be a hostile takeover.
Right.
So their board had to vote that, boy, they would be looking for a merger partner. They approached a few credit unions. We were fortunate to get chosen. Our board voted that yes, we'd like to take that on. Then you go through some regulatory process. There was a member. All of their members had the ability to vote yes or no. Do we want to merge with Charter Oak? And thankfully, to all of them, they voted yes. So that's how that process goes.
So sometimes whenever you hear about big mergers, and this is more banks or even other big companies, there's always people that might be against it because there's potential downside to it, maybe some job loss or something like that. Is that a possibility in any kind of a merger?
Well, sure. You look at economies of scale and whatever. In our case, they have one employee. We're more than happy.
There's not a lot of redundancy going on there.
Well, we need that employee. That she knows those people up in Quiet Corner. She knows them all. It's like they're her friend.
Yeah.
So we absolutely.
That's advantageous for you.
Right.
Yeah.
We want her, and we're thrilled that she's going to work for us and introduce us to her Quiet Corner members. And at the same time, we're looking to expand our presence up in northeastern Connecticut. So we're looking for we can bring a lot of things up there that they don't have today, and we're looking forward to that opportunity.
Is it possible for you to expand further? I mean, because are you locked into a certain geographic range when you were talking about that? Because there are credit unions that exist, like I guess the military ones, like Navy Federal, exists nationwide.
Well, Navy Federals, I'm not 100% sure of their field of membership, but I'm pretty sure it's all of the armed forces. Right. So they don't have a geographical constraint like we do. I mean, Navy Federal's here in Connecticut, and it's all over the country. Right. Ours is geographical, and there's different ways to define your field of membership. So for us, again, it's just Windham and New London County. You have to live or work in those two counties. So
I think there is something to what you said before about keeping some kind of boundaries and keeping it somewhat local, because for that community feel, and I think people actually appreciate that. Now, on the flip side, the positives, especially for the Quiet Corner people, being so small, they really didn't have access to a lot of the, to be honest with you, even some of the more current technology that's available.
Sure. I mean, again, that's another problem for small institutions, that they can't invest in the technology that's either here today or that's coming. So they didn't have any electronic services. At Charter Oak, we have home banking, we have bill pay, we have direct deposit, we have mobile banking now through your cell phone. All of that will be available to the Quiet Corner members today. After July 1st is when they become Charter Oak members. They will have that access, and hopefully they will use it and enjoy that. That's a big advantage for their current members, to be able to do transactions on their cell phone or at their home computer rather than having to come into the office.
But before the merger takes place, obviously there's a lot of investigating and a lot of research done on your part and their part. Were you hearing requests or needs for having some of these services that just weren't available up there because of the small size?
I know they were. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
They were hearing those.
This opens up a whole new world for them, doesn't it? They're going to have to get used to things that they haven't even had experienced.
And change is difficult.
Yeah, sometimes. Yeah.
But that's our job to make that change as easy as possible, and they'll be able to come into our offices, and we will sit down with them at the computers and help them with anything they need, as we do for our members today down here. There are still a lot of people who are Charter Oak members who still just are more comfortable coming into the branch and seeing the teller, and that's great. We love people to come into our branch. We're able to talk with them and find out what needs they have when we meet with them. You know, if you sit at home in your computer, there's no dialogue, there's no relationship. But, you know, credit unions in Charter Oak are all about relationships. So we encourage them to come into the office. Some people do both. Some people like to pay their bills at home at 10 o'clock at night, but they also want to come in and talk to one of our employees about a mortgage or an auto loan or some other.
You feel better about, you feel more comfortable, and you feel your mind is put at ease after you go in and actually talk to a human being, as opposed to just, you know.
And hopefully you've developed a relationship with somebody in one of our branches so that you trust them and they trust you, and they can talk to you about, you know, a lot of people don't like to talk about their finances. It's personal stuff. So you've really got to develop a trust between our employee and the prospective member. And we train our employees to do that, and it seems to me that our members enjoy it.
Okay, back to the economy. Back when I guess we would assume that the recession really kicked in, I guess you could kind of target the housing market as like the first thing to go and the first indicator. Now, you know, there are signs that we are coming out of it because the housing market is improving. One of the things that Charter Oak, you know, I'll allow you to brag for a moment and pat yourself on the back, is the mortgage situation with you guys. Talk about that a little bit.
Well, we have been the #1 mortgage lender in Eastern Connecticut for the past 3 years. We're very proud of that. It's exciting for us. We really, prior to 2009, we were more of an auto lender than a mortgage lender. We transformed that due to some, you know, some of the economy as well as some good hirings that we did. We have a great mortgage staff who processes and underwrites and closes mortgages. Our branches close the mortgages. We have great advertising, great rates, great products. I can't say enough, and obviously the members like it. Eastern Connecticut loves it because a lot of them were not members before. They heard about our mortgage products, and now they've become members of Charter Oak.
So when the housing market went down, and then we, you know, experienced a recession, and maybe still are now, obviously you felt the repercussions of that as well, right? Just like everybody else.
Well, luckily we were not as heavy into the mortgages at that time. So now when we've begun our mortgage, when we've really done well in mortgages, is when housing prices are relatively low compared to where they were.
That's when you want to buy, right?
And that's when we want to lend,
right?
You know,
right.
So if we lend to a $500,000 house and 3 years later it's worth $250,000, obviously we're at risk,
right?
As is and the borrower is not happy either. So I won't say it was all skill, but it was certainly some luck in there. Yeah. But it worked out well for us, and it's worked out well for our members.
You know, and when you talk. The word foreclosure comes up, people need to realize that banks and credit unions, they don't want to own the house. That's not what you want, right?
It's the last thing we want to do. It's absolutely the last thing we want to do. We are not in that business. We don't have real estate brokers or anything like that. We're not very good at selling real estate. We're good at lending. Right. So that is the last thing we want to do, and I'm sure that's the last thing the banks want to do.
So would you, you know, I made a statement before, and I don't even know if it's accurate or not. Would you agree, from your perspective as CEO of Charter Oak Federal Credit Union, are you seeing the housing market improve a little bit, and is that an indicator that we are coming out of this recession?
We have seen some pickup in purchases. Not a lot, not as much as we would want. It's going to be a slow process. It's really going to be tied to the unemployment rate
That's a good point.
in southeastern
Connecticut. Got to be able to pay your bills.
You know, when you hear what happens in the national unemployment rate, that's nice to hear for the economy, for the national economy. But we're very focused in eastern Connecticut, as are the banks in Connecticut, mostly focused on this state. Until our economy, local economy, comes back, and unemployment especially, it's going to be difficult for the housing market to come back.
So is there a light at the end of the tunnel? Are you seeing that, a little speck down the road?
We absolutely believe there. I mean, we think we're on the way up. The local economy is on the way up rather than a couple of years ago.
Is a good indicator of your ability to give more, or people coming in and applying for them and getting approved for them?
Absolutely. And we're seeing better quality of members coming in. Their personal balance sheets look much better than what they looked like back in 2008. So that's a positive sign right there.
Yeah, and you know, that a big buzzword is underemployed, aside from unemployed, and if you have to have the financial wherewithal to be able to.
It's a difficult thing for everyone to measure too. You know, the unemployment rate doesn't include people who have stopped looking for work, so that's a whole nother percentage on top of that, and that's a hard thing even for the government to measure. So those are things we look at when we're looking at how to set rates and where we're going to project where our business is going to be going forward.
All right, next topic. You touched on this a little while ago. One of my favorite things in the world is apps. And Charter Oak has an app, right? And you can do some mobile banking.
We do. We've recently just rolled out our new apps. We have one app for the iPhone. We have one for the Droid as well. Mobile banking, you can check your balances. You can get alerts when your balance goes below whatever dollar amount you set it at, whether it's 0 or 10,000. You can pay bills online. You can get information where our branches, online. Really, you can do just about anything you can do on home banking. You can do right from your cell phone, while you're sitting in an airport waiting for the plane or wherever you might be. It's something that every bank and credit union has got to do going forward.
You have to, yeah. Just like you have to be plugged into social media, which I'm sure you are as well.
Yeah, we are. We're on Facebook.
You have to be, and you can probably go right through your website. What's your website, by the way?
Our website is charteroak.org. Nice and simple.
What's on the website, by the way, for people to go and look at?
We've got everything on there. You can apply for a mortgage online. You can do it at 3 o'clock in the morning, anytime you want.
You just said mortgage. It's good now. Get a mortgage.
Yeah, right.
Do it.
You can apply for any loan, auto loans, any type of loan online. You can open up a deposit account. You can see what's the latest on our press releases, what's going on at Charter Oak. We've got some articles on there as well. So really, it's a full service website. That's where our home banking is based as well.
So again, the folks up in the quiet corner are there's all these new things that they have to look forward to. Got to get used to them a little bit.
Yeah.
Maybe a little bit of a learning curve, but it opens up a whole new world.
Hopefully the convenience to them will outweigh, I know the convenience to them will outweigh any difficulties they have in change. And we're here to help them. If they come into our new Putnam office that'll be opening up in July, they'll be able to come in there. We will sit down. We'll take as much time as it takes for them to get used to it.
At the same time you're merging with Quiet Corner, you are also building a brand new corporate facility.
Yeah, really the merger with Quiet Corner came a little bit out of nowhere for us. I mean, we've been planning this headquarters while we first talked about it in 2008 is when we talked about it as a strategic plan for our credit union. And then, the economy fell out of bed, so we took a little step back and took our time a little bit. But we're building a new headquarters on Route 85 in Waterford, right where 395 crosses 85, 65,000 square feet. It's going to house all of our administrative people like myself.
You'll be in your big posh penthouse, white,
We're a credit union.
It'll be a small corner
That's
office.
Right, that's right. Okay. It'll have a little bit of glass, let's say that. We left out the lap pool.
Right.
Okay. But there will be a new branch there. That will be our 14th branch. Putnam will be number 13. It's going to be a large branch, full service branch, safe deposit boxes, everything you ever wanted. Apply for the mortgage, get your deposit account, everything you ever wanted. That branch is going to be able to do everything. It's going to have a community room that's going to seat 190 people. So any local civic organization, charitable organization, no charge, wants to use that room for their board meeting, their community event, all they have to do is sign up. We already have people signed up. We're not even opening for another year.
Wow, that's great.
Yeah.
So this is really open for civic-minded people, community organizations to take advantage of the facilities.
We want to show off our new building.
Yeah,
that's certainly it. And yes, there are going to be Charter Oak signs on the walls. So it's marketing for us as well, and it's our way to give back to the community. We're nothing without the community, without our members. So we definitely want to give back to them. This is one of the ways we can give back.
And it's amazing. You're putting the word out, and there's already bookings, and the thing is, they're going to be open for another year.
Yeah. No. Well, we'd love it to be open sooner, but it takes time. It's going to be a change. The architecture of it is different than what you see here. It's not going to be your classic bank or credit union building. It's we've got some of the renditions on our website. And you can drive right by on 85. There's a nice sign out there, future home of kind of thing. It's going to be a state-of-the-art building. We're trying to change the landscape of banking, and this is one way to do it.
Where's the current location at, as far as the corporate goes?
Our headquarters is, that's one of the issues, where I'm housed in Groton. Mm-hmm. Our lending people are in Waterford.
Brings everybody together.
We have other people in another location in Groton, so this brings all of us together. We become more efficient that way. We spend a little time traveling back and forth between Groton and Waterford. It's not efficient. So.
Now you're going to be driving to Putnam every now and then too, though, right?
Well, we do that. I certainly have got to get up there, and everyone does. And
it won't be quiet anymore up there.
Well, we do make a little noise with our advertising. We're a little bit, I'm sure you've heard us on the radio a few times in our jingles, so that'll be up in Putnam that much more.
We're going to put the website up one more time for people to go and see. Brian Orenstein, CEO of Charter Oak Federal Credit Union. Big things to come, and I very much appreciate you being on the show today, so thank you.
My pleasure. I enjoyed it very much.
And thank you for joining us for another edition of For the Record. You can see this show as well as many others on our YouTube site. We will see you next time. Take care.